On December 1st, 1955, a quiet woman sat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't protesting loudly, she simply refused to stand. That moment lasted only a few seconds, but it ignited one of the most powerful civil rights movements in American history. This is the story of Rosa Parks, not just the woman who refused to give up her seat, but a lifetime of quiet courage that helped reshape America. Rosa Louise McCauley was born on February 4, 1913, in Tuskegee, Alabama, a place deeply shaped by the rigid rules of racial segregation. In the American South of the early 20th century, Jim Crow laws controlled everyday life. Separate schools, separate buses, separate waiting rooms. Even drinking fountains were divided by race. For Black Americans, these laws were designed to send one clear message: you were expected to know your place. Rosa grew up on her grandparents' farm in rural Alabama. Her grandfather often sat on the porch at night with a shotgun nearby, guarding the family from possible attacks by the Ku Klux Klan. Fear was part of daily life, but so was quiet resilience. Rosa attended a segregated schoolhouse where resources were limited. White schools had buses, books, and funding. Black schools had little more than determination. From an early age, Rosa saw the contradiction of American ideals. The country spoke of freedom, yet millions lived without it. These early experiences shaped her character. She was observant, thoughtful, and strong in ways that weren't always visible. The courage she would one day show on a bus didn't appear suddenly. It was forming slowly, year after year. Change often begins long before the defining moment. Character is built in the unseen years. By the 1940s, Rosa Parks was already deeply involved in the civil rights movement. In 1932, she married Raymond Parks, a barber and activist who supported efforts to defend Black men falsely accused of crimes. Through Raymond, Rosa became more connected to political organizing. In 1943, she joined the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. At the time, the Montgomery chapter was led by E.D. Nixon, a prominent civil rights leader. Rosa served as the chapter's secretary, but her work was far more than paperwork. She investigated cases of racial injustice, she documented violence and discrimination, she helped gather testimonies from victims who often had no legal protection. One of the most disturbing cases she worked on involved Recy Taylor, a Black woman who was abducted and assaulted by white men in 1944. Rosa helped organize national attention around the case. Even though the attackers were never convicted, the campaign exposed the deep injustices of the Southern legal system. Long before the bus incident, Rosa Parks had already spent years fighting quietly against injustice. She wasn't just tired one day, she was prepared. The moments we call sudden courage are often the result of long preparation. On the evening of December 1, 1955, Rosa Parks boarded a Cleveland Avenue bus in Montgomery. Public buses in the city were strictly segregated. White passengers sat in the front rows, black passengers sat in the back. If the white section filled up, black riders were expected to give up their seats. That evening, Rosa sat in the first row of the colored section. As more white passengers boarded, the driver, James F. Blake, demanded that 4 black riders move. 3 stood up. Rosa Parks did not. The driver asked again. She calmly refused. Later, she explained, "I was not physically tired. I was tired of giving in." The police were called. She was arrested. At the time, it seemed like a small incident, another routine enforcement of segregation. But word spread quickly through Montgomery's Black community, and within days, that quiet act of defiance became the spark for something much bigger. Small acts of courage can ignite movements larger than anyone expects. Rosa Parks' arrest triggered a response that few could have predicted. Local civil rights leaders organized a one-day bus boycott. Black residents, who made up the majority of bus riders, simply refused to ride. On December 5, 1955, the streets of Montgomery were filled with people walking. They walked to work, they walked to school, they walked miles every day. The boycott was so effective that organizers decided to continue it. To lead the effort, they chose a young pastor who had just arrived in Montgomery, Martin Luther King Jr. The boycott lasted 381 days. Carpool systems formed across the city. Churches organized transportation networks. Thousands remained committed despite harassment, arrests, and threats. Homes were bombed, leaders were targeted, but the movement didn't break. Finally, in November 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. After more than a year of resistance, Montgomery buses were officially desegregated, all because one woman refused to stand. Courage spreads. One action can inspire thousands. Victory did not come without consequences. After the boycott, Rosa Parks faced severe backlash. She lost her job as a seamstress. Her husband also struggled to keep employment. The constant threats and harassment made life in Montgomery increasingly dangerous. In 1957, Rosa and Raymond Parks moved to Detroit, Michigan, hoping for a fresh start. But life there wasn't easy either. Despite becoming a symbol of the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks lived for many years in financial difficulty. Later, she worked as a secretary for Congressman John Conyers, serving the community for more than 2 decades. She remained committed to civil rights, youth education, and social justice throughout her life. The world often celebrates heroes, but it doesn't always make their lives easier. True courage isn't about recognition, it's about conviction. Rosa Parks teaches us something powerful about courage. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes courage is quiet. It's the moment when you decide that something is wrong and you refuse to accept it. Her story reminds us of 3 lessons. 1. Courage grows slowly. Years of experience prepared Rosa Parks for that moment on the bus. 2. One action can inspire a movement. Her decision sparked a year-long boycott and helped ignite the civil rights movement. 3. Real change requires persistence. The boycott lasted 381 days because people kept showing up. History often celebrates big speeches and dramatic moments, but sometimes the most powerful act in history is simply staying seated. Rosa Parks didn't plan to become a symbol of history. She simply refused to give up her dignity, and that single act helped reshape a nation. Today, her story reminds us that ordinary people hold extraordinary power. The next time you face a moment where doing the right thing feels difficult, remember the quiet strength of Rosa Parks, because history doesn't only belong to leaders, it belongs to those who refuse to move. If you enjoy stories about history's most inspiring figures and the lessons they teach us today, make sure to subscribe and join us for the next journey into motivational history.